good.
Okay, so this is our ecs188 smart home final project. My name is Jessica, and my group members are Shavia, Emily, and Betty. And so for those who don't know what a smart home is or what are smart homes, smart home is a home setup in which multiple appliances and devices can be connected, and they are automatically controlled remotely from anywhere with a network device with an internet connection. And so the timeline with these technologies, from our report, we found that in 1936, it started with the Turing machine. Then with 1943, we had the electronic numerical integrator and computer, or ENIAC, also known as. And then in 1973, it followed up with the first handheld cell phone. And if we go to the present, you'll see that from those technologies, we now have even more advanced technologies such as smartphones, smart appliances, surveillance cameras, and all these sort of new, better technologies than what was first discovered or presented years ago. And so with our problem statement, with evolving technologies, such as I mentioned earlier with the timeline, the rise of smart homes has increased drastically due to their reputation for convenience. And so worldwide, the smart home market size is forecasted to be 99.41 billion US dollars, and with 258 million smart homes worldwide. Even though they may be convenient for many people, it does come with a heavy price to pay. And one that we mentioned is loss of privacy. And so in our project, we analyzed this breach in privacy by smart homes from different ethical standpoints.
The different ethical standpoints that we considered in our project is the utilitarianism standpoint and the deontology standpoint. With the ethical standpoints, we also took into consideration the right to be forgotten. So starting off with the utilitarianism standpoint, that standpoint of ethics goes from the point of view what are the outcomes of smart homes. It considers whether the outcomes of smart homes are good for the majority of the population, even though it might have some negative effects. If it is good for majority of the smart homes, then according to this ethical approach, smart homes are good. Whereas once we go to the deontology standpoint of view, out there, the outcome is not considered at all. What is considered is the process itself. So from that standpoint of view, there should be certain specific guidelines, certain ways in which the data should be stored, and there should be guidelines on how these guidelines would be implemented. So there might be some cases where it is not possible to follow these guidelines and data has to be stored somewhere. Then in that case, the right to be forgotten should be utilized, where the customers can determine if they want the data to be deleted from everywhere, whether locally, on the cloud, in the companies, or anywhere that it exists. So let's start with the utilitarianism standpoint. The pros of, when we look from this standpoint, the pros of smart homes that it generates happiness among the users because of its easiness, its convenience, and in certain technologies like the camera and bells, that gives a sense of security to homeowners, because when someone rings the bell, they know that who is ringing the bell. They can see in the cameras. But at the same time, there are multiple cons to this. If someone can someone can hack into these devices, like the ring camera again, then they can manipulate the data, and as well as they can shut it off totally, so that there can be theft. There can be identity theft also. If people get your ring camera information, then they could make fake IDs with your photograph, because the cameras already have your pictures. And this could this would be a very high level breach of privacy, and this would negate all the positive feelings that people have towards smart homes. From the deontology point of view, this can be there has to be a need for security, such that if a hacker even hacks into one device, then they should not be able to hack into the other devices. Suppose if someone hacks into Alexa or your Google Home, then they should not be able to hack into your computers or your phones where all your bank details, all your passwords are stored, because that would create a wide range of problems. Also, we could use cloud computing so that the data centers that host and process this information, we have to take care of that also, so that while from the cloud, no data is leaked, especially to big corporations who might be wanting to buy this data for multiple reasons, like advertisements or whatnot. The third thing is using edge computing. Out here, edge computing is basically a network of distributed devices. This results in high speeds and low latencies. So this results in lower chances of data getting stolen in the transit. For increasing the security, as part of the IoT, if a hacker can get into one device, then they can get into all of them. Like if your phone and your laptop are connected, then if someone hacks into your laptop, they can easily hack into your phone. Similarly, that takes place in smart homes as well. If someone hacks into your Alexa, they could hack into different technologies with which you might be controlling your lighting or your security measures in your house. The other thing is data storage. Smart home owners should be protected from the devices themselves. They should have a right, and they should have the right to choose how the data is stored and how the data is used. If if companies want to store the data on cloud, then they need to take specific permissions from the user and need to make sure that the users are fine with the data being stored in such a way. And that's when cloud computing comes into picture. The fourth thing is data usage. By all of these devices like Google Home or Alexa, they are listening to us even when we are not addressing them. And they record all of our things that we say, the regular conversations that you might be having with each other, with your friends, and they create patterns. And analysts use these patterns to analyze different behaviors for targeted advertisement or for different things. And these private conversations can even be leaked, and that can put people in a compromised position. Edge computing, on the other hand, is a network of distributed devices with high speeds and low latencies, as you mentioned earlier. And because of this, the problem of hackers hacking in during transit can be solved. Also, the last thing that we suggest is data deletion. If a device deletes the data periodically from all the databases and does not leave any traces, then people hacking into long sets of data can be reduced. Even if a hacker hacks into the data, then it would be for shorter periods, and from that, there would be less breach of security, less breach of privacy.
The third thing that we will be discussing in regards to whether smart homes are ethical or not is to talk about right to be forgotten. So users can have their data completely deleted from any system, server, or cloud whenever they want. This reduces the risk of using smart homes and increases the incentive for homeowners to consider making their homes smart, providing them more convenience and help through the use of artificial intelligence like Alexa and Google Home. For the takeaways, although smart homes has been a new technology and there have been an increasingly amount of users implementing their homes to be smart homes, there needs to be a proper guidance from an ethical standpoint so that the maximum number of people can gain the greatest benefit out of it, and the potential of one's data being leaked is reduced to almost zero. Thus, We call for companies to take responsibility for their products and actions, as well as start thinking from an ethical viewpoint apart from a monetary one before it leads to the user's data being compromised, which would negatively affect their company branding and public image. These are the sources that we have used to be discussed in our report and presentation. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. So I will actually start it with a statement you have in the almost the last slide before resources. You said company needs to take responsibility for their product and actions, and related to smart home, related to anything for our privacy. Can you give me an example that any company actually take the responsibility by themselves initially in the IT space? Comparing to there is a penalization, there is a new policy. So can you actually give an example that company actually did take responsibility for their product in terms of privacy?
Over the top of my head, I can think of Apple, because a few years back, I read in the newspapers that there was a case in which the prosecution needed, the police needed access to a person's iPhone, and so they asked Apple if they could crack the iPhone because it was locked and they did not have the password. At that point, Apple took a step to place the foot down and said that they cannot do that because that would not be ethical, even especially to the other customers also. They would lose trust in the company's privacy policies.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Apple is, thank you very much, Shreyas, to give the example Apple. Apple is a company that's actually indeed very unique. I remember this was even before Steve Jobs passed away, when Apple was fighting with Android. And the way Apple or Steve Jobs was talking about, saying that, well, do you want pornography to be able to pass around into phone, because there was a design to kind of phone. So Apple is actually indeed an example, but they were very rare. They were very rare. Most of the company you can think about, especially those data collection company, they actually never really fixed the problem until they got exposed to a certain issue. Even they got exposed, they actually did very little. So that lead to my second question for all of you. This is actually, I wish I can convey this point a little bit earlier. I kind of conveyed that in the only until I saw your written proposal, is that I saw you guys, when you define smart home, you were heavily influenced by Alexa and Google Home, this kind of product, which their device has internet layer 3 connection. So you understand what is a layer 3 connection, right? Meaning that you have an internet accessibility to communicate back to either AWS or to Google. That's actually the architecture, because that model, in my opinion, actually is wrong model for smart home. Smart home should never allow a device to connect to a layer 3, because by default, let me ask another question for all of you. What do you think is the most important function of the smartphone? I mean, you mentioned the keyword convenience. What is other critical things that you think smart home should deliver to its user? Give me some example. What do you think is the most valuable, most critical one?
in my opinion, I believe the most valuable part of
Mhm.
having smart homes is that if there is an intruder that
Right.
broke my home,
There's a security application, right? There's a security application that's actually going to show what's going on. So in the security application, think about the non-smart home version of a security device. It's basically detecting somebody break into your door and break into some kind of sensor, and then you inform the law enforcement about what's going on, right? So you can actually do this with internet lists. I'm saying layer 3 internet lists means that I'm actually do not allow anybody with an IP address to actually log into any of the device. Because that's actually where the security come in, because people can break into one device, as you mentioned, can compromise a lot. So that's architecture problem already. If a company sell a smart home with that kind of feature, we're expecting this is going to happen. So with a security, what I can do is I can actually have a motion sensor, which is capture all the data that you're thinking about doing surveillance. And the thing is that today's technology, I can actually install a local, when I say edge computing, I'm not talking about edge computing outside of your house. I'm thinking about edge computing device inside of your house, which that device itself is also not layer 3 internet connected. So you have a total isolated environment, except you might have a layer 7 connection to the security company. So essentially what you want to have is all your local data, local intelligence, watching about what's going on within the house. And then you actually inform the law enforcement or security company with a layer 7 connection. Layer 7 connection means that I will be able to send something like a message, but only that device, but that device won't accept any other protocol. So any other protocol, it won't work. It's just one SSH tunnel that established to a security company. That's the only security channel that the system can connect outside. I'm actually thinking about this. If you think about this, I would like to invite your thoughts on this. Will most of the privacy issue be addressed?
I feel
Yeah,
yes.
go ahead.
I feel that with local storage, multiple issues can be addressed, but then like certain technologies would require cloud. So in that case, the edge computing outside the house might.
Can you give me an example? What kind of application you require cloud?
So like, as we discussed, like the Alexa, Google Home, that might require cloud computing, or
Okay.
there's like another application where you can control your lighting from your phone. For that also, if you're outside and if you want to control your lighting or something, that would require cloud computing.
Let's actually parse this out.
Mhm.
We cannot say we're given by Alexa or Google Home. That's given to us. That's the company who never worry about our privacy. So we are going to push back by having the right architecture. So that's why I don't trust the company, but I trust the architecture design to be better. So let's get rid of that. So now you talk about lightning control, right? So if I want to have a lightning control, then the only data I need to send with my, I don't need a layer 3 connection to that lightning control. I just need a SSH tunnel with my cell phone, and that is only passing the information about whether I want them to turn on the light or turn off the light. So that's actually, I would argue that cloud, by the way, it's still useful, but it's only useful when I want to store data. For example, I have the home, I have 24/7 surveillance video about my home. By default, this is not real-time upload. And by default, my internet for that smart home device is only limited to layer 7, not layer 3.
Mhm.
When I want to update, so every week I have a schedule and I want to upload the video to cloud. Only that time I opened up my firewall to allow the data to go out at that time. So that is, you can see that make the architecture a little bit different, but we're
Different.
basically say deny by default.
Mhm.
And the thing is that will help us to take care of a lot of the issues. So one lesson I want to really convey is that we sometimes, when we think about this issue, especially such an important issue about smart home, we kind of being constrained by the first impression about what the big company lead us. And I like your team. I like actually every UC Davis student I have taught, trying to abandon that constraint from the beginning and try to ask why we have this problem. Is this something which we need to worry about? So that's why my first question is that I actually I kind of lost hope in those companies to really do things right, because they have their pressure. I don't blame them. They have to make profit and they don't want to do whatever is not going to help them, which that is unethical by itself. Okay. So when I read your paper, the things I like the most is that you actually propose a model which is hybrid, combine deontology, utilitarianism, and then you also include some right to be forgotten. There's 3 elements you try to combine to handle that. So the first part, I remember your paper saying that you want to have a set of rules because of the ontology. You want to have a set of rules about what data is going to be. Let's talk about that a little bit, assuming we're following temporarily with what Alexa want to do. And you want to decide a set of rules for you to decide what data to be collected, what data not to be collected. How do you decide the rule? So you know what I'm talking about, right? You at least I know one of you write that piece of text in your report saying that, yeah.
So to start off, we believe that Alexa should only collect the data when the user prompts the AI Alexa to do something. And we know that Alexa and Google Home do collect data even when they are not being prompted from their surroundings. So to the set of rules, we believe that smart devices should not actively collect data when it's not being prompted from its surroundings. So if the users are having a conversation and the smart devices are not being prompted, data should not be collected. Data should only be collected when the smart devices are prompted. So that's a set of that's part of the set of rules that we believe that smart devices should abide by.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask a question. Thank you very much, Betty. I think that's one of the good rule that's actually we think is important to implement. That it might or might not be deontology, but it's actually a good rule. So let me ask you the question: do you know how much memory that a Alexa device has? How much memory? Meaning that how much data that Alexa can actually have, can actually store the data? How much memory? Anybody want to Google?
I can Google.
According to Google, the Amazon Echo has 4 gigabytes.
4 gigabytes.
Okay, 4 gigabyte. Yeah, that's about right. So Alexa is a device with 4 gigabyte of memory, which means that at any time it can store 4 gigabyte. Anything more than 4 gigabyte, then it will not be able to store the data. It has to send it to the cloud, right? I mean, that's essentially with operating system, with anything else, it probably have about 2 gigabyte of memory, and it has to actually send that 2 gigabyte. So essentially, if I designed Alexa, if you have an internet that's connect 24/7, then I try to fill that buffer with 2 gigabyte, and then I try to use the internet to actually just send the data over there. So, okay, here's a way to actually realize. So when I think about this problem, I'm not thinking just about the ontology from the philosophical perspective. I'm actually thinking about from technology perspective, is that how do I actually implement that rule in Alexa, assuming we're using Alexa. So the way I will do it is that I actually will build another device that's actually behind Alexa, which this device is going to choke the internet. So essentially, this device is actually going to listen whether I activate Alexa, like what Betty says earlier. So only when I activate when I say, hey, Alexa, please brew me a coffee, or hi, Alexa. I mean, I used to brew coffee with Alexa, by the way. I did that a lot. I really funny using Alexa to control the light of the there was this kind of very expensive light bulb. It would change color. I said, Alexa, change light number 2, the light bulb. It was very cool. But what I can see is I can build a device which only turn on the layer 3 internet when the Alexa is being activated. If it's not, then Alexa has no internet. So the thing is that it's keeping the data, but at most it can send is limited to that. And I can even make it worse, saying that, well, if I activate Alexa, I only allowed you to send 20 packets, because I can say, well, when you want to brew a coffee, how many packets do I need? Probably 5 packets or 6 packets, I can get it done. So that technology can actually heavily hammer Alexa for try to taking any kind of unnecessary information. It's like a firewall in your home, which is limited all the smart home application. Just for you to think that if you can do that, that's also helping that. Okay. My next part of the question is, when you actually talk about, so you have a deontology, you have a utilitarianism. So how do you actually define the utility function for your utilitarianism? When you say happy about your home, how do you actually define happiness? How do I actually measure that?
I'm sorry, please repeat that question.
Right. So in your smart home, right, you're actually trying to combine both the ontology, right to be forgotten. Right to be forgotten is essentially forget some of the issue you have in the cloud. But then you're basically also using the utilitarianism. I think the way you use it, if I remember correctly, is that it's actually providing some sort of security, and which you're basically using the security as a happiness measure. So I want you to actually tell me a little bit about what do you think? How, because utilitarianism, we're essentially saying that we want to maximize the happiness about. So here is getting me confused. Are you talking about utilitarianism, happiness for the whole society, for the whole neighborhood, or is actually only utilitarianism to a particular home for all the activity and member within that home? So what's your thought about applying the concept of utilitarianism there?
Oh, okay. So the way I was thinking, like, measuring happiness was, I guess, using my own experience, having that thought, like knowing that my home is protected, knowing I have security cameras installed, knowing that sense of security, that makes me pretty happy. And pretty secure that my home is safe and that I'm sort of safe if I have that technology. So that's the way I would measure happiness. And as well as others who have that sort of technology, they find it convenient. It probably helps them feel much safer in a sense, and probably makes them happier to have that sense of security with them.
Right. Yeah, thank you very much, Jessica. I now remember a little bit what I read. So I guess you guys wrote not just about what you just said, but also knowing that some of the data, some of your privacy is not being exposed too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a trade-off is that you don't lose too much privacy, and yet you will obtain the things that Jessica just said, and that is basically a balance. So I know my question when I first read it, I should have wrote it down, is that apparently there is a trade-off between these two. It's a privacy and the security you try to accomplish. So how do you actually be able to write I would say a policy or mathematical formula, try to balance between these two goals? I mean, essentially, the system has to be able to figure out how much privacy you're willing to sacrifice to get how much security you're going to get, right?
I believe that when you first buy the device, for example, Ring, which is part of, which is manufactured by Amazon and can also be implemented with Alexa. When you first go through the installation process, a policy or a instruction within the system could be asking how much notifications and privacies that the camera's surveillance and the security and privacy measures are up for the user to decide. So privacy is in the hands of the user, but at the same time, the user also gets the amount of security that they feel comfortable and safe with.
So to add on to that, this would be something similar to the camera example where you gave, where you just open the firewall just once a week to push the data. It would be something like that, where you push the data only when you are in charge of your own data. You know that I want to push the data at this point, and only at that point the data should go.
Okay, yeah. So today, Alexa is just we want to do what you just said, but today's technology like Alexa, Google Home, essentially you might or might not be able to sense the security you're getting, but definitely you have no idea how much privacy we're losing in that process because it's not transparent. Okay, yeah, and that function is actually important, because that function, if we know how much we are willing to trade off, then we can answer the question about utilitarianism. And that combined with the ontology, which you set up the rule to protect, is going to be something which I think is very innovative, because most of the ethics aware work is usually they using one of the tool and they compare which one is better. But I haven't seen any project which is talk about the combination of these two, that how you can actually put these two concepts together for a good purpose. I think it's interesting application for the application like smart home. Okay, all right. I guess that's my question. I mean, your domain is definitely a very interesting domain. Is touching on the technology, touching on our life, and to measure happiness is actually not that trivial. By the way, Alexa works very hard on the natural language processing perspective for their device. And so I believe Alexa in the future will have the capability to know if the people in the home is upset or not. They can actually tell whether you're happy discussing with your family member or you actually have a fight, which is under very stressful. And then they can at that time select some music to play or do something or change the color of the light bulb to be able to do something. I think that is interesting. They can detect your emotion. But the fundamental question, I think, is for the privacy is the architecture of Alexa need to be, or Google Home, really, really questionable because they are designed basically for the convenience of the big company, not necessarily convenient for your privacy and my privacy. Okay, all right. So any question for me or any comment before I stop recording?
Nothing from me.
Okay, okay. So I think, can you say your name again? Shavia?
Shavia.
Shavia, yeah. Shavia, yeah. Shavia, you're the only one who's graduating this quarter, right?
Yes, I believe
Okay,
so, yeah.
the rest of you will stay, and I wish you have a good summer. And Shavia, good luck with your next step, and maybe you will be working with AWS and Google. And when you interview, you can tell them what I think about their product. Okay. Okay. It's not right in my opinion. Okay. All right. I'm going to turn off, and you can leave because I will stay on. So for the next group to join. Okay. Thank you for your hard work. Bye. Bye, Emily.
Okay,
Bye,
yeah, thank you.
Betty. Bye, Jessica.